You ever hear of a place literally called Riesending, which in German basically means the giant thing? Yeah, turns out that's not an exaggeration. This cave is Germany's deepest and longest, stretching 6 kilometers, that's nearly 3.7 miles, or about 19,700 feet, through rock and blackness. And in 2014, it became the setting for one of the wildest, most exhausting rescues in modern history. It's June 7th. A guy named Johann Westhauser, 52 years old, physicist, total cave nerd, heads down with 2 buddies. They've done this before. These are pros, not tourists. They drop nearly 1,000 meters, about 3,280 feet, underground, squeezing through passages barely wide enough for a person to breathe in. When at about 1:30 in the morning, bam, a rockfall. Westhauser gets nailed in the head. We're talking a fractured skull, eye socket shattered, bleeding inside his head. He's awake, but barely hanging on. This is where the nightmare really starts, because no radio, no phone, nothing. They're stuck in this stone maze way down. Like, I'm talking proper, oh damn, that's deep territory. One of his teammates stays with him. The other, he has to climb back to the surface by hand, a 10 to 12 hour journey through icy, wet, vertical shafts just to call for help. That moment alone blows my mind. Like, imagine realizing your friend's life depends on whether you can crawl out of hell fast enough. Rescuers finally get the message and start what would become one of the biggest cave operations ever. And trust me, it only gets crazier from here. Over 700 people joined from Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Italy, Croatia, an international tag team of human moles. 200 actually went into the cave, while over 500 more handled everything topside. That's an army of people just to save one guy. Everything, food, medicine, ropes, had to be carried by hand. No machines, no shortcuts. They even set up this insane cave-link text system that literally sent messages through solid rock. It's like science fiction, but covered in mud. Really impressive. By June 11th, rescue doctors reach Johann. And yeah, if you've been keeping track, that's 4 days later. 4 days. Dude survived all that time down there. Absolute miracle. They stabilize him, load him into this shock-proof cocoon of a stretcher, and start the slowest elevator ride in history. They literally had to use their own bodies as counterweights to hoist him up vertical shafts. Every few feet forward felt like winning a war. There are actually photos of this, so let me show you real quick. This one, oh, and this one. After 11 days underground, he finally sees daylight again on June 19th at 11:44 a.m., helicopter straight to the hospital. And yes, this guy survives. No brain surgery. Months of rehab later, he even goes back to cave exploring. Bro really said, "Rocks tried to kill me once. Let's see if they'll do it again." The whole thing cost around €1 million and left over a ton of debris behind that team spent years cleaning up. They even sealed the cave after like, "No more tourists in the death hole, please." Which, yeah, probably the right move. Not exactly Airbnb material down there. September 11th, 2002. A Czech diver known only by his initials, MK, heads into an underwater cave in Poganica Bay, off the coast of Croatia. 31 years old, experienced diver. Nothing unusual about him at first glance. He'd been diving all day with 3 friends, but that last dive, he went down alone, at night. Hours pass. No sign of him. His team calls for help, and soon police divers are in the water, but things go bad fast. One of them gets lost and dies trying to find him. They eventually recover the officer at around 80 feet deep, 24 meters, and MK even further below, roughly 177 feet down, 54 meters, at the bottom of the cave. Now, what they found there is the kind of thing that makes investigators stop and go, "Wait, what?" His mask was off, regulator out, knife in his chest. But his gear? Perfectly fine. No signs of a fight, no damage, no sabotage. Just him, alone, and dead. At first, police thought murder. Had to be. They tested everyone. 2 of his diving buddies even got detained after polygraphs spiked on words like knife and blood. But after a full investigation, nothing. No foul play, no gear malfunction. Everything checked out. Then the autopsy came back. Cause of death? Drowning, and a single self-inflicted stab wound. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. Why would someone do that underwater? Turns out, there's a grim explanation. His dive computer showed he'd been lost for a while, probably disoriented in the dark. His tank ran empty, and he had nowhere to go. He'd been drinking earlier, not drunk, but his blood alcohol was 0.114. And at that depth, combined with nitrogen narcosis, it messes with your brain, makes everything feel slow, dreamlike, and terrifyingly unreal. So when that oxygen started running out, he probably realized what was coming, that he was about to drown, slowly. And according to the forensic experts, that's when he took his knife and ended it on his own terms. The whole thing ended up in medical journals as this tidy case study about human panic and decision-making under pressure. But a lot of divers called it bullshit. They said the experts turned a man's final, terrified moments into a science project. Whatever really happened down there, that man lost his life. And honestly, I feel bad for him. Rest easy. We're talking November 1988, out in the middle of nowhere. The Nullarbor Plain in Australia. Flat desert for miles, nothing but heat, dust, and sky. And then, underneath all that, a giant labyrinth of water-filled tunnels called Pannikin Plains Cave. The kind of place that looks like it was designed to test how much fear a human brain can handle before it snaps. 15 people went down there. Divers, scientists, film crew, led by a guy named Andrew White, who was basically the Indiana Jones of cave exploration. So remember his name. They weren't thrill-seeking. They were mapping the system, shooting footage, doing science. Everything was fine, until Mother Nature lost her mind. Out of nowhere, a freak storm hit, and I'm not talking bit of rain. It dumped 2 years worth of water in 20 minutes. Golf ball-sized hail, winds over 60 miles an hour. In the middle of the desert, the water poured straight through the porous limestone above the cave, an estimated 79 million gallons rushing underground like someone opened the gates of an ocean. Then came the nightmare moment. The cave entrance collapsed. Tons of rock and mud fell in, completely sealing them off. 15 people, trapped nearly 260 feet underground, cut off from daylight, with freezing water rising around them. Now imagine that, total darkness, no way out, and the sound of the cave literally shifting over your head. They huddled on ledges, rationing water and food, soaked to the bone, trying not to panic. Andrew White and another diver, Vicky Bonwick, were perched on a tiny rock ledge, roaring waterfalls beside them, boulders moving around like the walls were breathing. And this is where White proved what kind of guy he was. He basically said, if we sit here, we die. So we move. He led a desperate push through collapsing passages, trying to find any exit route. No maps, no guarantees, just instinct and stubbornness. Legend. Meanwhile, up on the surface, rescue teams used this custom-built radio that could send messages through solid rock. Yeah, same kind of setup I mentioned back in Story 1, the Riesending rescue. That tech straight up saved their lives again. It let rescuers guide the trapped cavers step by step back toward the blocked entrance. 27 hours later, almost a full day and a half, every single one of them made it out alive, not a single death. Just exhaustion, shock, and a story that sounds like it came straight out of a survival movie. It's September 1984, South Africa. A cave explorer named Nuno Gomes is diving with two close friends, Peter Verhulsel and Malcolm, deep inside the Sterkfontein caves, part of what's known as the cradle of humankind. It's a maze of tunnels, water, and rock, beautiful, but terrifyingly easy to get lost in. Their goal was simple, map out a flooded section called Milner Hall. They planned to lay a safety guideline, a literal lifeline, from the entrance to the farthest point. Nuno went in first, strung out nearly 400 feet of line, and everything went perfectly. The team was pumped. They went back in together to follow the new line, reaching an air pocket at the end. Mission accomplished. But on the way back, things fell apart. Malcolm tapped Nuno. Peter was gone. They turned around and saw him drifting off into a side tunnel, just exploring, curious. Nuno tapped him, signaled to come back, and Peter did. But moments later, he vanished again. This time, they assumed he'd taken another route out and didn't double back. Huge mistake. When Nuno and Malcolm surfaced, Peter wasn't there. They waited, then dove again. 4 long hours of searching through black, silty water. Nothing. The visibility was basically zero, like swimming through ink. They finally called for help. Rescue divers showed up, but even they couldn't get far. The silt was so stirred up, they could barely see their own hands. Eventually, the search was called off for the night. Everyone thought Peter was gone. But he wasn't. Somehow, Peter was still alive, trapped in a side chamber, disoriented and completely alone. He found a small pocket of air, a rock beach, and decided to wait. He flashed his light toward the water, hoping someone would see it. He banged his tank on the rocks. Nothing. When no one came, he shut off his light to save the last bit of battery and waited in total darkness. Days passed, then weeks. He drank from the cold cave water to stay alive, but there was no food, and the temperature hovered near freezing. He lost weight, grew weak, and time stopped making sense. Rescuers came within 100 feet of him multiple times, close enough to almost save him, but never found the right passage. The cave was a 3D labyrinth, twisting in every direction. Peter survived for about 3 weeks before he finally succumbed to starvation and exposure. 6 weeks after he first went missing, they found him near that small beach where he'd waited all along. In the sand beside him, he'd written a message, "I love you, Sherlin Ma." That was his final note to his wife and his mother. After that, South Africa banned cave diving in Sterkfontein completely. Too dangerous, too unpredictable. You can have all the training and experience in the world, but in a place like that, it's the cave that decides who makes it home.